Welcome to History Happy Hour, a special series from History Uncovered.
It's the end of June 2023, and we've handpicked a few of our favorite history stories from this month. Today, we'll be talking about
traces of a ritualistic drink containing human blood discovered inside a 2,000-year-old Egyptian vase.
The discovery of a Bronze Age sword in Germany so well preserved it still gleams.
How one mayor became the most hated man in France for authorizing the removal of stones which were perhaps 7,000 years old.
The discovery of a vampire graveyard with 450 bodies in Poland.
And why researchers in Germany believe they found the long-lost city of Rungholt, known as the Atlantis of the North Sea.
As well as a number of historical anniversaries, including the coronation of Anne Boleyn, the assassination of Robert Kennedy, and the death of Anthony Bourdain.
So we'll get started, as always, with some articles that we covered on the site for June.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm Austin Harvey, and I'm here. Kalina's also here.
I'm also here. Hello. That's good. We're doing great today. We're recording on Friday, and that always goes well. Usually does go well. I don't know what's wrong with us today.
It usually does. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Something. I haven't been able to get my ADHD medication, so that's part of it.
Oh yeah, I keep reading about that.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yikes! I have no excuse.
It's been real fun
at all.
But yeah, anyway, let's dive in. I wrote this one over the site, so I'll talk a little bit about this Egyptian vase.
Mm-hmm.
It was a vase depicting the head of the Egyptian god Bes,
mm-hmm.
which, if I'm remembering right, Bes is this Egyptian deity who served as a protective spirit for mothers and children. But there's something about the way Bes looks that was really unique. Because, most of the Egyptian gods have that, like, part animal, part human appearance to them. Bes was part feline, part human. Though any pictures you see of Bes don't look particularly cat-like.
Yeah.
Mostly just looks like a wide, hairy, bearded man.
Oh.
But, yeah, it's very weird. It's very strange. But yeah, there was a cult dedicated to Bes, and I hate the fact that we have to use that word because cult isn't necessary. It's not, like a modern day cult. It was just a group.
Like supporters of Bes or worshippers, maybe?
Worshippers, yeah, of Bes who, created this hallucinogenic cocktail with all of these strange ingredients.
Very strange ingredients.
Yeah, a mix of Paganum harmala and Nymphaea cerulean, so I don't know if I'm getting those right, more commonly known as Syrian rue and the blue water lily, both of which have psychotropic and medicinal effects. Researchers have noted that Syrian rue seeds can produce high quantities of the alkaloids harmine and harmaline, which induce dreamlike visions. So very similar to like ayahuasca.
Okay.
And some of those similar ritualistic practices that you see in a lot of like Native American tribes as well. With things like peyote, except this cocktail they made also contained human fluids.
Yeah,
and we said blood, but it wasn't. It was a little bit more than blood. There was some other stuff in there as well. Which
all sorts of fluids.
Yeah, and they would also mix in like ale and wine and juice and things like that. So it was very much like a ritualistic human jungle juice.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Yeah. But yeah, they think a lot of those other things are added in to kind of obviously make it taste better and actually be consumable. But yeah, you would induce visions, and it was a ritualistic service, a way of appeasing the god Bes and asking for protection.
And they discovered it in like this really old vase, which is sort of fascinating. They were able to find trace elements
trace elements of here they found blood, breast milk, and a third substance that may have been vaginal mucus discharge.
Wow.
But they were able to
so fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
It's interesting, but also just like how like they were able to look at this like really old vase and find that stuff, be like, we think we know what they were doing with this.
Right.
It was a ritual.
Yeah, to think that those sorts of things linger that long. They did use like a very thorough, it was liquid chromatography with tandem mass spectrometry. Basically meaning like, so the chemistry technique they use, you can separate liquid, the physical separation of like liquid chromatography, meaning like breaking down the individual components of a liquid. So this isn't accurate scientifically, but to like illustrate the point, it'd be like reverse engineering Kool-Aid back into powder and water. And probably even more than that, it would probably be all of like the different things that make up Kool-Aid powder.
Yeah.
And then using the spectrometry to date it and analyze them individually. The spectral information that it provides allows them to determine what substance it is based on its molecular weight.
I wonder, I assume there's probably like not enough blood, but I wonder if it'd be possible to analyze like the DNA at all.
And find out like who, or like more about the person at the very least.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if there's any, I don't know, it's 2,000 years ago, so it probably would be hard to connect that to someone today, but I wonder. Yeah.
I'm also curious about like what the actual purpose of the ritual was and why it required them to consume what they were consuming.
Yeah, I can kind of see it. If it's like something very, I don't know, it could be either like you give a sacrifice of yourself or something to share, you're sharing with people, getting closer. I have no idea. I'm not an expert on Egyptian rituals by any means. So,
yeah, but I do find it very fascinating. A lot of those ancient rituals I think are so unique, the way people got there, the way that they determined just like, oh yeah, this is what Bess wants. And then they always drank it out of ceramic mugs that looked like Bess, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Like souvenir mug.
I think you mentioned in the article too, you mentioned that like this, it happens in like other cultures too. Like people have like psychedelics of some sort.
Right.
And there's always like a ritualistic.
Right. Yeah. I feel like you hear that with a lot of tribes, especially like South American, Mesoamerica, like, you get a lot of that like mind altering substance, but it's, and of course, like always natural stuff. But like, like I said earlier, like peyote, ayahuasca, all those things that, you know, the stereotypical like Native American spirit journey, but it all was viewed as this way of sort of connecting with a higher power.
Yeah. Yeah. I know people who still do that to this day.
They make whole retreats around it now.
They do. Yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said about it. It's definitely, I've never done psychedelics, but I have said I would never do LSD, but I would try mushrooms.
Interesting.
The chemical component of it freaks me out, but like the more natural stuff, I'm like, okay, well, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe learn a little bit about myself.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. People say they do.
Well, there's all that research now, too, that like doing doses of certain types of mushrooms can like cure your depression for like 6 months or something like that. Yeah,
I think I saw a headline about that today, and it was like, this is what people say. Like, I think the science is still not quite
it's very up in the air.
Yeah.
At least.
But yeah, I've known people who like microdose for that reason, to like try to control depression or anxiety or whatever.
Yeah. Anxiety, I don't know about that. I know people who do too, but I think it would make me anxious.
Yeah, I don't know. Our next story is something even older than the vase, which is a sword.
Yeah, this one's very neat.
This one's cool. When I wrote this and I read that it was from 14 BCE, I had to double check. I was like, what?
Yeah.
That can't be right. It has to be like 14 C. But it is. It's 3,000 years old. And so they found this sword in Bavaria. And you've seen pictures of it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it looks like a sword. It's not it looks like a movie It's not prop. Damaged. Yes, it does. It's really well preserved. And I mean, in the press release, they're like, it like almost like glimmers still. Yeah. And you can see it when you look at it.
Even, funnily enough, has the shape of Sting from Lord of the Rings. Which is like, you know, and that sword glows. And this looks very similar to that, which is
true. That
kind
sword
of interesting.
Does glow. Hunting orcs back in the day.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. There was a lot of like cool stuff about the sword. I mean, they were still trying to figure out its full story, but it had this really cool hilt that was very specialized. Only like 2 people could make it, or the people who could make it were like grouped in 2 different places.
Right.
And it was buried with a man, woman, and child. And they don't know how they're related, but they were buried like pretty quickly at the same time, around the same time.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like a family. If a family had a sword.
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, definitely significant in some capacity, just based on the way it was buried and the fact that it was not a common type of sword.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and there were no impact marks or anything, so it wasn't used as a weapon. So it definitely was.
They don't think so.
Right.
Because it did have this center of gravity where they said it'd be really good for like slashing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So Yeah, stuff like this really brings home like the humanity of people who lived a long time ago to me.
Yeah.
Objects like this.
That's why whenever people say, don't value items, value experiences, that's like, carpe diem, live in the moment, put all your, yes, to a degree, but I don't think there's anything wrong with valuing objects like mementos, things that are personal like that. And this is a good example of why, not that like my MacBook is not going to be like a historic relic, right? But maybe these people didn't think a sword was going to be this historic relic. And
yeah, it's an interesting question because I feel like maybe things back then were meant to last more than a lot of things.
That's true.
Today, people live very like, I don't know, temporary lives in some ways, and just in terms of like where they live or what they do. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting in 3,000 years if the Earth is still around, and we don't know if it will be.
Right.
But if it is, but they will find what archaeologists will find.
Yeah, that's why I'm always interested with time capsules as well.
Oh yeah.
And just
have you ever buried one before?
I haven't. I'm trying to think if I ever did as like part of high school or anything like that, but I don't believe I did.
You should do it. I don't think I've done it either, but
yeah, I kind of want to now.
Yeah,
I don't know what I would put in it.
To think about it. Yeah,
put like
a note of some sort. Yeah, and then
put like my screenplay in it.
Yeah,
my sitcom pilot from college.
Why not?
That'd be amazing if like future humans were like, "Oh my god, we have to film this."
They'll find it and be like, "Oh, it's a religious text," and then build a new society around it.
Oh no!
Could be.
I don't want anyone to ever worship anything I've done in a godlike fashion.
They might be drinking blood and like sitting around your script.
Yeah, that's. I'll leave a screenplay and like a very cheap bottle of whiskey.
There you go.
And then maybe like 200 years from now, it'll actually be decent whiskey. It'll like age it.
Yeah, maybe so. That's possible.
Yeah. What would you put in a time capsule?
What would I put in a time capsule? That's a great question. Gosh, I don't know. Because you wanted something that's like captures a time, but it's not like so valuable that you
would miss it now.
Give it up. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of what I have is very, I'm not sure it would survive in a time capsule.
Throw like my Dungeon Master's Guide in there.
Yeah. Could do that. I don't know. I feel like anything I would put in a time capsule is probably not in this apartment. It's probably like in my like childhood bedroom.
That's fair.
Or something.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Some old Pokemon
looking
cards.
around, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Like a Game Boy, if you had that laying around.
Oh boy, we have a lot of Game Boys laying around.
Do you really?
Yeah. Oh well, yeah. Back in my
oh my
parents'
god, can
place.
I buy one off of you? I've been wanting to buy an old Game Boy and like gut it and replace the screen with a new screen and like get into old technology modification. It's like this weird hyperfixation I have right now.
Yeah, I'm going home in August, so I'll see what I can find.
Oh hell yeah!
I'd have to get my sister's like sign off because I think they're probably hers and not mine, but I'll let you know.
Sick.
Yeah. Speaking of old things, there's a lot of old things today. I mean, I guess always.
It's a history show.
These roundups, but
yeah. It's sort of the opposite of what we were just saying, though. Like we're talking about preserving the past and why that's important as well.
Yes.
Side note, also, I'm very curious about the way the internet will affect future perceptions of our time, but that's like a whole other thing.
I think the internet's gonna like be deleted at one point.
Maybe, or I think we're gonna merge with it.
Oh God,
like AI. No, but yeah, but like obviously there's an importance to preserving certain things that have historical significance, especially like the way you can learn about a time, which explains some of the frustration around the decision of Olivier Lepic, the mayor of Carnac, France. Is that Carnac? No way.
Carnac.
Is that how it's pronounced?
So.
That doesn't sound French at all. Carnac, France. Carnac, yeah. Well,
I think so. Carnac.
But yeah, destroyed what many considered to be the French Stonehenge.
This was a really funny article to write because when we were pitching articles, it was like the French Stonehenge. And then I started reading about it and I was like, okay, it's interesting. So basically in Carnac, there's like these very famous old stones, 7,000 years old, arranged in a way that seems purposeful. So that's important. And people visit those and stuff. They're called menhirs, I assume is the pronunciation.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And in this one part of Carnac, there was this like someone wanted to build a hardware store.
Of all,
and they
of
asked
all
the mayor.
things, too.
It's funny because the name of the hardware store is Mr. Bricolage, which is like just a very funny French word for like making things. But anyways, they wanted to get a permit, and there were some stones on the site, and the mayor said it was okay anyway, and they destroyed the stones. And then this archaeologist was like, wait a minute, those were menhirs, like those were, ancient objects. How dare you destroy them? And it became this huge like debate, this huge like cultural touchstone in France of like, how could you destroy these stones to make a hardware store? And the mayor was like, listen, like no one thinks these are like what you think they are. No one said they were these stones. Like there's no value to them.
Right.
And then it was like, well, maybe they didn't investigate the stones enough. It's just a debate about whether these things were even what
whether
they were
just stones or whether they were actually the Karnak stones, which or just stones. But like Marine Le Pen got involved, and she called it deplorable. And I mean, understandably, like imagine if somebody did this with Stonehenge, even just altering any of the pillars there. I mean, obviously they didn't rip up every single menhir that exists in Karnak, but it'd be like if someone like found stones like near Stonehenge and removed them that weren't part of Stonehenge. It just seemed like very like the mayor was like, it's not like I destroyed the Mona Lisa, like that was his line. And I was kind of like, okay, I don't know, like it seems like either they're getting angry about nothing or I mean, the thing with the menhirs are so massive, how would you not know? And like you said, they're very like specifically arranged. Right. These in the photos I saw, these ones were just they looked like rocks, like surrounded by weeds near a chain link fence. They didn't really look like something significant. So I could see why. And it's not like he was like, sure, do it by himself. Like there was an investigation. Some agency said they're of a low archaeological value. So I think it's probably fine, but it's just like it's interesting that this became like this big thing in France where like Le Pen got involved and everything. And, I mean, I fully understand the criticism, but it is difficult and nuanced. I think my biggest issue is just that it was for a hardware store. It's like you could have put that anywhere. It didn't have to be there. Right. Mr. Bricolage. Yeah. One of those things is just like, is it worth the risk? Right. I would argue no, personally, but I'm not the mayor of Karnak, so. Or at least like take a close look before you make a decision. Right. Be sure. And if you're not sure, maybe you can move the stones. Maybe that would also be deplorable. It also seems not great. Yeah. I mean, the safest move is just say, no, put your hardware store somewhere else. Doesn't have to be somewhere else. There. Does not have to be. Well, now it's too late. They're gone. Yep. Gone forever. Speaking of gone forever, all these bodies in this grave site. Well, they thought they were gone forever, and maybe they weren't. Right. But this story is about a graveyard in Poland that was discovered near a church, and was not just any graveyard because a lot of the bodies were like decapitated or covered in bricks or had coins in their mouths, and it was because people at one point thought they were vampires. Yeah. And that's how you deal with vampires. You dig up the body, decapitate it, bury it again. Yeah. We had, it was like maybe right when I started, we had another very similar story to this where they found the grave of a single woman who was buried with a sickle over her neck so that if she were to rise up from the dead, she would decapitate herself, which is especially brutal. There were some eerie photos of that too. Yeah. Yeah. That one's a little bit haunting looking, but it is funny to think how like serious people were about vampires in Poland at one point. Well, and apparently in this region of Poland, like there's still some of that fear. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, it never really went away. I mean, hasn't gone away. Fair enough. There's still people who think witchcraft is afoot in America. Very niche sections of the population, but yeah. I mean, we've never really been able to let go of that fear of the paranormal completely. Yeah. I think the unexplainable and the strange. I mean, in Poland,
And I think a lot of places in Europe, this came out of a fear of like disease,
right?
Tuberculosis. That was not in Poland specifically, but yeah, this idea that they didn't know how it was spreading.
Right.
People got very pale,
I'm sure. Well, yeah,
blood.
a lot of people who looked dead and then all of a sudden were not. But rather than being like, oh, wow, I guess we got that wrong, or like it's a medical miracle, they were afraid of it.
Yeah. Well, because if sickness was spreading and you have no other way to combat it, might as well dig up the person and decapitate them. And
there was a lot of those, like in France in like the 1700s, people were afraid of werewolves very specifically. Oh. There's like a whole werewolf epidemic.
That's right. The Bête de Gévaudan.
Yeah. It's so interesting the way that every place has its own thing. France was, you know, the Rougarou, right? Or is it Loup-garou? I was thinking Loup-garou is the main character in the movie Wolf Cop.
Oh.
Which if you've never seen
never heard of it.
It's fantastic.
I haven't.
It's so campy. There's a line where this guy goes, Lou, you're a wolf. And then him as a werewolf turns and goes, cop. It's so funny.
Oh, yeah. Good.
I very much enjoy folklore and the way it teaches you about parts of the world. So I just think it's so interesting that like the French had the werewolves, Poland and like Dutch countries had vampires. And then you look at like some like African and Caribbean countries where they very much believed in like zombies.
Yeah. Or like the Loch Ness Monster.
Right.
I don't know if that quite fits, but
I don't know, maybe not. But like, yeah, like voodoo, zombies, and then the way all of those things have converged in America obviously makes sense, but it's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people are always going to try to explain things they can't explain. And maybe there are things that we can't explain.
Right.
Creepy crawlies and such.
Yeah. Satanic Panic of the 80s, 70s and 80s, another big thing. Like, yeah, it's just very, very fascinating. And I think it's a lot of stuff we take for granted, too, because we see going back 100 years now, these things were put to film, Dracula, the Wolfman, that they've become like so embedded in pop culture that it's easy to forget that they were like hundreds, if not thousands of years old, these concepts.
Yeah, right. I guess with the internet, too, there's been like new things. Like Slender Man was an internet creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird times. I guess our final news story is another weird one. Yeah, I mean, basically the story was that these researchers in Germany were looking for a lost city. And they think they found it. It's a city, and I might be mispronouncing it. Rungholt was a city that was allegedly destroyed in the 14th century by a massive storm and lost. And they think they found it. They think they found in like the middle of this, or not in the middle, but like in the sea, the foundation of a church and like a drainage system. And they think they discovered this lost city, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
The story is that in the 14th century, these young men were like kind of like teasing a priest and trying to get him to give a pig like last sacrament. And the priest was really mad. And so the next day he went to a church and he prayed for God to punish the young men. And then the story goes, the whole town got swept away by the water.
Bit of an overreaction.
Yeah. A little bit. But there was really a storm at that time. So
yeah,
could have been.
It's kind of crazy to think that a whole city can just be gone.
Yeah, I mean, my mind just went to like Jakarta, which I think is slowly like sinking, and they're trying to move everyone out of the city. And I don't really know much more than that, but that's,
Yeah, California in a couple hundred years.
Yeah, Manhattan maybe apparently sinking.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's there have always been rumors of lost cities, Atlantis being the most famous one. There's another one that I'm blanking on the name of, but it comes up a lot when we talk about like Maya cultures. Oh. That someone was looking for at one point.
Not El Dorado.
No, but that is another one. El Dorado, also a good one. And then there's a Japanese city as well, Yonaguni-jima, that's you can like go and explore it. It's underwater completely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You like dive down?
Yeah, people will regularly go and like scuba dive and swim around. There's photos of the city itself just fully submerged underwater.
Wow.
Makes a little bit more sense because Japan is a series of islands, but
right. when was the city from?
Ooh,
do you know?
That's a good question.
Because there's so many earthquakes there too. I wonder if it was just like
I mean,
tectonic
plates shift, and then 62 miles east of Taiwan. Like they know exactly where it is.
Wow. Huh. Just like on an island or something that's slowly with rising sea levels or something.
Yeah, it's here we go. The lost continent of Mu was the other one that I was trying to remember. So they were looking for the lost continent of Mu. It was this like mythical city very similar to Atlantis. Then they found the sunken city of Yonaguni-jima. And they originally believed that it was this lost continent of Mu that was written about in Mesoamerican stories, or told of in Mesoamerican stories.
Wow.
And then obviously they more research went into it, and they disproved that. And they were like, no, that's not what it is. It's this Japanese island. But yeah, really neat. I would love to. I want to go to Japan. I would love to check that out as well. But I don't know if I would be brave enough.
You could just book a voyage on a submarine. Like, just kidding. Those are officially out of fashion, I think.
Yeah.
Trips like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, though. I feel like we should write a post on lost cities. I just wrote it down in my
for your Q4 pitches.
List of post ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keeping a list.
I know. Yeah, those are the idea of lost cities is so interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, it's so like, I don't know if romantic's like the right word, but this idea that something existed there and then it's gone but preserved, and you can see, I don't know, this ghostly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Pompeii.
Yeah, it is it's like but there's another element to it beneath the water.
Yeah, it's not morbid curiosity, and it's not romance. It's like morbid romance. I don't like a new term for it. Morbidly romantic.
Yeah. I mean, it is like the Titanic too. Just these things that are sort of preserved underwater that are associated with human stories and tragedy.
Yeah, just kind of stuck in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, those are our news stories for June. Lots of old lost things from thousands of years ago this month, it seems.
Yeah, we had some really interesting stories this month.
We did, yeah.
I mean, we always have interesting stories, but
obviously, yeah.
One's this month with like a lot of depth to them.
Mm-hmm. In more ways than one.
Hey.
Yeah. I mean, June is also a good month for historical anniversaries. Yeah. We have a couple to discuss. The first being on June 1st, which was the coronation of Anne Boleyn. Dun, 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 dun. I was reading about it earlier. She was 6 months pregnant at the time with Elizabeth I. Yeah. Who was, they all thought was going to be, hoped would be a son.
Of course. Yeah.
And it wasn't. She and King Henry VIII had been together for 7 years by that point, but married for just 6 months.
Was she, which of his wives was she?
She was his second wife.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you heard this before? Well, it's this little thing to remember. Well, you have to know their names too, but it's divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived.
Wow. Okay, so Anne Boleyn was beheaded.
She was beheaded.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he married, what's her face? Jane. I can't remember. Jane something. But anyway. Yeah. So Anne Boleyn was like the reason why he left the Catholic Church, why he divorced his wife, why he caused that huge schism. It was to be with Anne because he thought that Anne could give him a son. When she didn't.
Right.
He had her beheaded and trumped up adultery charges.
Yeah, it was obviously her fault that she didn't have a son. Obviously.
Right. Just a strange twist of fate that almost none of Henry's wives could give him a son. He did have a son eventually, but his son died very young. Yeah.
And Elizabeth I was, Elizabeth I, right? Like, we still, up until recently, we still had Elizabeths in charge of England. So.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think the Tudors are so fascinating. And there was a really great exhibit at the Met I guess it was last year actually, we had their portraits. And it's one thing to see them online, which we do all the time for work, but to see them in person was so cool. So colorful and big and but Henry VIII was really a piece of work.
A piece of work is a nice way of putting it.
And I think it's supremely ironic that he has, a couple of kids, including these two daughters, and the two daughters are the ones that end up ruling, Mary and Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of recontextualizes all those beheadings and.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't entirely necessary, bud.
I also think it's kind of funny that neither Mary nor Elizabeth had any children then, too.
Yeah.
So, like, everything he wanted to, have this dynasty or something, and
it just never happened for him.
Wasn't meant to be.
And he's very much not remembered positively by history.
No, not really. Sort of like, have you ever watched The Tudors, the show?
I just remembered that it existed when you said their name.
It's like, I mean, it's history with like more flash, I guess. Yeah. But I thought it was good. I enjoyed watching it, at least the first couple of seasons. Until Anne Boleyn dies, then it's
spoilers.
Yeah.
400 years and 1 day after Anne Boleyn was crowned queen, Queen Elizabeth II was coronated, which is very interesting.
I thought that was interesting too, and I wonder if there was any debate at all about that date. But I guess they were like, whatever, doesn't.
I wonder if that's
matter.
why they waited till the second.
Maybe
the first is now
I don't
bad
know.
luck.
It's Anne Boleyn's day. Yeah. Queen Elizabeth was so young; she was 25 when that happened.
Wow. I don't know much about Queen Elizabeth II.
Oh, I mean, I do enjoy like royal history, so I know a little bit about that stuff. But like, it's just she wasn't supposed to be queen. Her uncle was supposed to be king, and he abdicated to be with an American, a divorcee. So then Elizabeth's father became king. Reluctant king, got them through World War II. Then he dies, and then she's queen.
Yeah,
and then she rules forever, as we know, because she just died.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I've looked into her, funnily enough, her life a little bit because I found this conspiracy theory, this absolutely ridiculous conspiracy theory that she was a cannibal and that was why she lived so long, because she would drink the blood of the young.
Wow.
And then, allegedly, I don't believe this story at all, but allegedly, one of the royal guards told a story of Queen Lizzie riding around the palace on a scooter and just screaming maniacally.
Wow.
It's just such a funny image in my mind.
Yeah. Seems very out of character for her. Well, we do want to mention about Elizabeth before we move on to our next topic is she's associated with our cocktail of the month for cocktail chatter.
That's right. Yeah. A little cocktail corner.
The cocktail corner. Yeah, it's Dubonnet and gin, which she drank before lunch every single day, which I find admirable.
Me too, Lizzie.
It's not a very strong drink.
Yeah.
From what I understand.
No, it sounds more like she had it before lunch. So
aperitif.
An aperitif, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just gin and Dubonnet and lemon and ice, I think. So pretty easy to throw together.
Gin is apparently very good for digestion.
And preventing disease, or is that a myth?
As long as the disease isn't alcoholism.
I thought gin was invented because British people in India would drink it because they thought it would prevent malaria or something.
Well, I'm sure I don't know. The alcohol probably just killed bacteria.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, you can find conflicting information everywhere online about the positive and negative effects of alcohol consumption.
Whenever there's someone really, really old and people are like, "What's your secret?" They're like, "I drink whiskey every single day for my whole life."
Yep, that's what I do. And I'm still kicking.
Well, and Queen Elizabeth drank gin and Dubonnet.
Of course it's gin, too. That's such an English.
Well, and she drinks London gin.
Of course, yeah.
She has to.
Bombay.
Yeah. Anyway, raise a glass to Queen Elizabeth, who left us earlier this year. Was it last year?
Oh, my. I don't remember. I think it was
end
of last year. Yeah. But it was like November or December. It was winter for sure.
Yeah, because then he was coronated this year.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, raise a glass. Have a
Dubonnet and
favorite
gin.
Cocktail. Dubonnet and gin. I've never even had Dubonnet.
It does sound good. What is Dubonnet? Is it like a...
It's like a French a wine type thing, I think.
Okay.
Let's see.
A sweet French red wine. Yep.
What up? Yes.
I don't have any Dubonnet. I do have a Pennsylvania wine here, which is relatively sweet and not very good, but maybe I'll throw some gin in and see.
I was going to say, I'm not sure. Well, I don't know if Pennsylvania is really known for their wine. It
is not.
Oh.
Pennsylvania wine is very, very sweet, even when it says it's dry.
Oh.
Yeah. It's all like...
Yeah, it seems like it wouldn't be warm enough or dry enough.
Yeah, we don't have the climate for it. And a lot of people will make like blueberry wine, table wine. Yet everyone wants to make a winery.
Yeah. They're pretty big in Washington State, but only in the east of the state because that's where it's dry.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've ever really had a PA wine that I was like, that's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Global warming is coming and things could change.
That's true.
Yeah. I guess our next news story is a grim but pretty fascinating one. And that's
sort of like American royalty almost.
Yes, it is.
In a way.
Very
the
good.
Kennedys. Yes. Who else would you even say like American royalty?
The Kardashians. Just kidding.
there was like the presidential. There was like the Kennedys. There were the Goldwaters, the Bush family.
Oh, I wouldn't say the Goldwaters.
No,
but the Roosevelts.
The
perhaps?
Roosevelts. Yeah.
But this story is the assassination of Robert Kennedy in June 1968. June 5th.
June 5th.
Fascinating story. He just won the California primary. He was walking through the kitchen and he was shot and killed by, the man who went to jail for it was Saran. Who is still in jail to this day. But the story is a pretty fascinating one, as we were kind of talking about before turning on our microphones. There's some doubt surrounding Saran's guilt.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much echoes the John Kennedy story. But yeah, multiple like conspiracy theories. Some people say there was a second gunman, and there's so many things they point to: the acoustics of the room, the number of shots fired. They said there were like 13 shots fired, which probably wouldn't have been enough to be from one concealable gun.
Only held 8 bullets.
Yeah. So that's kind of fascinating. Other people said that the second gunman was the security guard in the Ambassador Hotel. There's, of course, there's the Manchurian Candidate theory, conspiracy theory, that someone implanted this idea into Saran and like activated him remotely.
Well, he says he has no memory of doing this and has since the beginning.
But then didn't he also say something about how it was driven by like rage he felt for 20 years?
About Palestine, yeah. But he practiced shooting that day. They found notebooks where he wrote like RFK must die.
Right.
So which he says he doesn't remember writing. I think the interesting thing about it is that it's not like this theory is coming from the far corners of the internet. It's Bobby Kennedy's son and one of the men who was with him that night and was shot in the head, Paul Schrade. They both think that there was a second gunman, which I think is
right. But
what makes this interesting.
Now, I will say, Bobby Kennedy's son, kind of a conspiracy theorist.
He is.
So I don't know how much, maybe 10 years ago, if it was like, I don't know, his son saying it might have been, I'm like, oh, that's kind of convincing. But now he's like yelling at doctors on Twitter with Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, which is just not the company that you want to be associated with.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think the Paul Schrade thing is interesting, though, because he was there. He was shot in the head. And he thinks that there was a second gunman. Right.
I mean, it's entirely possible. I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, I'm generally like a skeptic about these things. And like, if it looks, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And like, the science that found that there was 13 gunshots is debatable,
Right.
The science that found that the bullets came from different guns it's unclear, but it's probably not true. And Saran wrote like RFK must die. I don't know. Seems like clean cut.
And anybody can say, I don't remember doing that. It's not an excuse to do it, though. It's like, if you black out drunk and drive your car and crash it, you don't remember doing it. Doesn't mean you didn't do it.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, I think his name is James Earl Jones, who assassinated MLK. Like at first he was like, yeah, I did it. And then later he was like, I didn't do it. I was set up.
Was it?
And MLK's family, like, did I say James Earl Jones? Is that an actor?
Yeah, that's what I was like. Whoa, let's not throw James Earl Ray. James Earl Jones voiced Darth Vader. Let's not.
Oh, yes. Had too many gin and Dubonnet cocktails with this recording, clearly. Yeah, he was like, no, I didn't do it. And then MLK's family kind of supported him about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, so many second gunman things with Lee Harvey Oswald as well.
I'm a patsy.
Yeah. I mean, Julius Caesar, right? Probably Brutus probably did the same thing. It wasn't me. I don't remember.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird, tragic thing. And I think it is fascinating just because of people who are into this idea that there could be someone else.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it makes sense. It's possible. Not everyone's going to love a candidate. I do think it's interesting that was the event that prompted the Secret Service to start protecting presidential candidates. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah, there was really no Secret Service protection prior to Robert Kennedy dying. So, why wasn't there?
Yeah, I guess it was a less violent time.
You'd think after JFK being assassinated, though. I mean, he was acting president, and the Secret Service was around him. But
right, I think campaigns really changed in the '60s, and candidates suddenly were a lot more more out there than they had been in the past. Yeah, I mean, I think the other fascinating thing about RFK's death, and then we can move on, but it's just that how that changed American history. Because what if he had won the presidency? That would have changed everything. Instead, it was Nixon won,
right? And
obviously that had some ramifications in the years to come. And it's just
one of those big what ifs.
Yeah. Well, our next story is also about a tragic death, as it so happens. Yeah, Anthony Bourdain's death on June 8th, 2018. He died by suicide.
Yeah, 5 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy how quickly that passed. Yeah, that's a bummer. I think about that every now and then. It's just a sad story. There's nothing else. I really thank God there's no conspiracy. Maybe there are. I haven't looked into it. I'm not going to look into it.
I don't think there's conspiracy, but there was a book last year that from what I read about it, that kind of blamed his girlfriend.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, he always struggled with his mental health, and he was an addict for a long time, and I don't think it's fair to blame any one person.
Yeah. I don't really know too much about him, but I knew enough about him that when I heard the news, I was like, oh boy, that's surprising and horrible.
Yeah. I never really watched No Reservation or anything, but I was more of an Andrew Zimmern Bizarre Foods fan growing up.
Oh, I don't know that person.
You don't? You never watched Bizarre Foods? Oh, you missed out on some prime early 2000s television.
Do you remember what any of the foods, what the most bizarre ones were?
I mean, he would go all over the world and just eat local cuisine. So it was I can't name the country specifically, but he ate a giant worm thing, a stuffed big worm. He ate bull testicles. There's that Italian cheese that has little worms in it. He ate some of that stuff.
I think we have an article about that.
I think we do.
Yeah.
It's a great show. I think he's still out there doing something, but I watched a lot of Andrew Zimmern, did not watch a lot of Anthony Bourdain, but I did watch the documentary about him that came out shortly after he died.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Just his life, the way he came up in the restaurant industry as someone who worked in the restaurant industry and who's my uncle still works in the restaurant industry. My mom did. It's kind of in our family. Yeah, really interesting story of that rags to riches kind of situation.
Yeah, I'd like to read. I think his book is Kitchen Confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'd like to read that. I saw it on a stoop once, and I was like, "Oh, I have too many books," and I left it there, and I kind of regret that.
Yeah. His story is very interesting, and it is really unfortunate the way it ended. Yeah.
Well, fortunately, our last story is also interesting, but it has a happier ending.
Yeah, we get to end it on a good note.
Ends on a good note. It's the anniversary, June 18th, 1983, when Sally Ride went to space.
25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
Right? 35?
25.
35 years?
30?
What?
No, 40. 40 years.
Oh my God. What is wrong with me?
We can do this. We got this.
What is it?
All depends on who you ask.
Jeez, yeah. 40 years. I don't know why that. Whatever.
40 years.
Move on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a cool story. Sally Ride was the first American woman to go to space.
Yeah, third woman overall.
Which is cool. The first woman actually also went to space in June.
Yeah.
But I think in 1960.
It was, 20 years earlier. And that was a Russian woman named Valentina Vladimirovna Tereshkova.
Yes. Great Russian name.
Yeah, I said that to myself like 13 times before we started recording, so I would get it right. I probably still got it wrong.
Very good. Yeah, I think the Sally Ride story is like interesting and frustrating because like when she was preparing to go to space, reporters asked her all these like really stupid questions. Like they were like, "Do you like weep when you're sad?" Like, things like that. But
doesn't everybody?
Well, she's like, "Why aren't you asking like this like male astronaut that?"
Right.
And they were like, "We don't care if he cries when he's sad."
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but she did it, and she's a great life story, and
very inspiring.
Very inspiring.
I love the way I'm so glad we don't do it anymore. But the way interviewers used to talk to women, it's so
It's so awful.
It's like when you see those old like advertisements for like women's home products, and it's just like, oh geez, it's so like out of it. Like it'll just blatantly be a picture of like a man backhanding his wife, and it'll be like, I told you to clean the floors. Clorox. It's like, jeez.
Or it's just like, want the perfect Christmas gift for your wife? A vacuum cleaner.
Right.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And then, like Marilyn Monroe, they always asked her a bunch of like really dumb questions that you would never ask a man. Like whether or not she questions about like her weight changing and things like that. It was just like, right. They still do that to actresses. They ask them like how they lost weight for a role or what they ate or something like that. To be fair, they kind of do that with male actors too, depending on the role. Like Christian Bale always goes through those like really dramatic body transformations.
A lot of actors do now for like those Marvel movies. Yeah. It seems like,
like
well, now everyone's taking like drugs to lose weight, so I guess that's the question they're asking now.
Right. Yeah. But I don't know.
Weird times.
Sally Ride, do you weep when you're sad?
Just a funny thing.
How is that relevant?
Ask any like with a straight face.
How is that relevant?
I know. Yeah. She was also. I mean, she came out as gay like later, but I think she was also the first like gay astronaut to go to space.
Nice.
Yeah.
We need a word for that, but I'm not going to coin it.
All right. Probably wise.
Yeah. But I am going to.
You can just say happy Pride instead, which I think is this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot of Pride celebrations are this weekend into next week. Pittsburgh's Pride Parade was 2 weekends ago. It
was kind of funny. I was talking to someone in my running club and they're like, oh, I went to Pride in Brooklyn. And I was like, what? I thought Pride was like much later. But apparently each borough has its own like Pride thing.
Yeah. Pittsburgh just has the one big one. I did not go because I have nothing but shame.
Oh.
No, it's really just because it's like way too loud and noisy and I don't do well in crowds.
Yeah. I did go to Pride in 2019. I saw Bill de Blasio there. He waved at me. It's pretty exciting. Nice. But yeah, now that I'm older and post-pandemic, I probably wouldn't go.
Yeah.
Too scary. That's that for our history and news roundup for June. There is one thing we want to talk about at the end of this show.
Is there?
Do you know where I'm going with this?
No, I don't.
Yes. Well, we want to talk about getting ideas from our listeners.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah. We're hoping people are gonna like message us. You know, we'll list an email and phone number. In a second because I don't have it in front of me. But if you have an idea about an anniversary to cover.
Drink suggestions,
historical drinks that you know of could be really cool.
Or if you know the interesting history behind a drink, if there is one behind a cocktail, or even like the creation of a drink, like
wine or beer.
If anyone knows if gin was drunk in India by the British colonizers to stave off disease,
give us a call. Give us your best historical facts about that. We might play it on the show, I think. So that could be cool.
Yeah. If you leave us a voicemail, there is a chance.
Voicemail,
it's just like a Google voice number. So,
right.
You can leave us a message and we'll play it back on the show and give you a little shout out. Be a whole fun thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to call, because I don't blame you. We do have an email. It's just podcast@allthat'sinteresting.com. You can write in suggestions, episode ideas, cocktails, suggestions. If you don't like my take on the royals, if you want to get into a little argument.
Yeah, definitely email in. Yeah, you can also, I have the phone number here. If you want to give us a call, leave a voicemail, it's 929-526-3029.
Yeah, drop us a line. Follow us on TikTok at Real History Uncovered. I do read the comments there. That's fun sometimes. Sometimes it's not.
Oh, do they leave a lot of comments on our TikToks?
Depends. There were a couple on the Black Dahlia one that was just like, is that a real photo? And then a lot of people responding saying, sadly, yes. Unfortunately, yes. Variations of the words sadly and unfortunately.
Yikes. Huh. All right. Yeah. Comment on our TikToks and say hello. And check us out on the site. Obviously, we publish new things every single day. All interesting.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yep. Interesting news stories. Yeah. News stories we didn't talk about here. More science and weird news focused.
Yeah. Sometimes just happy news stories that occasionally comes up.
Yeah. Got a couple things about dogs on there.
Yeah.
That one.
We got some good
dog
stories.
Who paints pictures. His name was Van Gogh. That was a fun one.
Yeah. We had the world's oldest dog a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Some groundbreaking information about government employees coming out saying that we have alien technology and bodies.
Yeah. We were the first people to publish that.
We're not, but but we do actually have an upcoming series probably next month, end of July, early August, timeline wise. But another little mini series here about UFOs, which will be very fun because I believe strongly that aliens have visited Earth, and you do not as much. I'm more like, meh. I don't know. Again, I'm generally a skeptic about these things. Yeah, we'll have a little Mulder and Scully dynamic going on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely subscribe to the podcast. Stay tuned for that because that's bound to be fun. Yeah, and I guess we'll be our next show will be David Reimer. Someone who was forcibly transitioned from male to female at not birth, but 8 months later. Yeah, very young. I mean, it's a complicated reason why, which we'll get into. Yeah. During the show. But later learned the truth, transitioned back to male. Very interesting. Very interesting what that study tried to prove and what it inadvertently proved about gender and sex, which I think is really relevant to today's more broad conversation about gender and sex. Yeah, we'll get into all of that next couple of weeks. David Reimer, UFOs, It's going to get good for the summer. All right. I guess we'll talk to everyone next time. Yeah. Thanks for listening.